Good morning, Africa. What a pleasure to have you joining us today. My name is Doreen Apollos, and we're coming to you live from the African Union headquarters here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on this 25th May of 2023. Today is certainly a special day as we commemorate Africa Day, a day when the Organization of African Unity was formed. Today is also a special day because 2023 marks 60 years since the Organization of the African Unity was formed, and later, 39 years later, in 2002, the Organization of the African Unity was relaunched to the African Union with a much more enhanced mandate. Well, today we'll be unpacking why the day is quite important as we reflect on the spirit of Pan-Africanism, our struggles for liberation, the social-economic emancipation, and connecting the dots of the past, the present, and the future. And so we ask you to stay with us all through today. We have quite an action-packed day today of both formal and informal activities. We're expecting the start of the official program to kick off at 10 a.m. So stay with us. But at this moment, we want to take a look at the journey that we have traveled so far. Well, since 1963 to date, and look at how we have kept the spirit of Pan-Africanism alive. Let us watch this short film that captures that journey, and then we'll get right back to you to unpack the activities of the day. Welcome again to this Africa Day 2023.
Welcome to Africa, the birthplace of humankind, the second largest continent with a landmass that can encompass several nations of the world, home to the most spectacular landscapes and wildlife on Earth, and an abundance of natural resources, with 30% of the world's mineral resources, including 12% of the world's oil reserves, 42% of global gold supply, between 80 to 90% of chromium and platinum group metals, and 60% of the world's arable land. Africa is the true powerhouse of the world. As home to over 1 billion people with the widest variety of arts and culture, over 2,000 languages and a multitude of religions, Africa is truly the most interesting and diverse continent on Earth, with 55 countries united under the umbrella of the African Union.
Work out a continent-wide plan for a united or common economic and industrial program for Africa. This plan should include for setting up a common market for Africa, an African currency, African monetary zone, with continent knit together in common policy and common purpose, we shall have made the finest possible contribution to that peace for which all men and women thirst today. Africa must unite.
On the 25th of May, 1963, at a meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, 32 heads of independent African states agreed to the creation of Africa's first post-independent continental institution, the Organization of African Unity, OAU. The creation of the OAU was a manifestation of the collective desire by Africans to take charge of their destiny and work towards a continent where all countries were independent, universally free from colonialism and apartheid, and united as one under the philosophy of Pan-Africanism and a drive to embrace Africa's culture and common heritage. The Charter of the OAU stated the goals of the organisation, which were to promote unity and solidarity, intensify cooperation to better the lives of Africans, defend the sovereignty, territories and independence of states, eradicate colonialism and promote international cooperation. As more countries gained independence and Africa's place in the global arena changed, the need to transform the OAU became more apparent and urgent. The organisation needed to refocus its attention from the fight for decolonisation and ridding the continent of apartheid towards one of increased cooperation and integration of African states so as to drive economic growth and development. And on the 9th of September 1999, the heads of state and government of the OAU issued the CERT Declaration, calling for the establishment of an African Union. In 2002, the African Union was officially launched as the successor of the OAU to deliver on the new spirit of Pan-Africanism, guided by a vision of an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. The African Union heralded a new chapter in Africa's story, one where Africans were responsible for charting the course of their future and ensuring that the continent took its rightful place as a key player in the global arena.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity.
In step with the transformation and launch of the African Union, the organisation rolled out the new symbols of integration and unity. The African Union emblem is at the heart of the organisation's branding. It consists of elements that signify Africa's past, present and future. The palm leaves stand for peace. The gold circle symbolises Africa's wealth and bright future. The green circle stands for African hopes and aspirations. The plain gold map of Africa without boundaries in the inner circle signifies African unity. And the 7 interlocking red rings signify African solidarity and the blood shed for Africa's liberation, and also represent Africa as one continent formed by its 5 geographic regions: Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, Central, and the 6th region representing the African diaspora. The African Union flag consists of a map of Africa encircled with 55 stars, which represent the 55 countries that are members of the African Union. The African Union anthem, titled "Let Us All Unite," is a musical celebration of Africa's past, its present, and hopes for the future. To achieve its vision, the African Union Constitutive Act was crafted as the guiding framework for the organisation and the legal instrument to accelerate, facilitate and promote the continent's integration. The key objectives of the African Union are defending the sovereignty of African countries, championing the continent's transformation through private sector engagement, economic integration and participation in global trade, encouraging multi-stakeholder engagement to promote universal health and to improve living standards and providing a safe environment for Africans through conflict resolution and promoting peace and security. Through its key institutions and regional alliances, the African Union also works to accelerate political and socio-economic integration by working with member states to coordinate and implement policies aimed at promoting sustainable development in key growth sectors such as agriculture, infrastructure and energy, including the use of modern research and integration of science and technology as part of the development agenda. To achieve the vision of an Africa whose growth is inclusive and people-driven, the organisation works to ensure gender equality and development, and that women are active participants in decision-making. Africa's youth are presented with opportunities to contribute to the socio-economic agenda, and even the participation of the African diaspora is included in the development discourse. On the global arena, the organisation defends African common positions and champions the cause for Africa speaking with one voice in all areas of international cooperation, from trade and defence to foreign relations. Guided by the various continental treaties and charters on citizen participation and citizens' rights, the African Union works with member states to promote democracy and good governance and to ensure the upholding of human and people's rights. Ultimately, the African Union, in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, is consolidating all national and regional efforts in all spheres to ensure Africa attains greater unity and solidarity. From its headquarters in Addis Ababa and through the work of its various offices in the continent and internationally, the African Union works to deliver on its mandate and implement policies and programs as guided by its key organs, which are the Assembly of Head of State and Government, the Executive Council, the Permanent Representative Committee, the Specialised Technical Committees, the Peace and Security Council, the Pan-African Parliament, the African Union Commission, the African Union Judicial, Human Rights and Legal Organs, the African Peer Review Mechanism, the Regional Economic Communities, the Financial Institutions, and the Economic, Social and Cultural Council. The Assembly is the supreme policy and decision-making organ of the African Union and is composed of all heads of state and government of member states. The Assembly determines policies and priorities, elects and appoints the leadership of the AU Commission, admits new members and approves the annual programme and budget. It also determines and approves the key structures, functions, powers and regulations of its organs. The Assembly chairperson is a head of state of government, elected by his/her peers for a renewable one-year term. The Assembly chairperson also represents the African Union Assembly at global forums. The Executive Council is composed of foreign ministers or ministers designated by the governments of member states. It supports the Assembly and coordinates and takes decisions on policies in areas of common interest. Other functions include electing members of the African Union Commission for appointment by the Assembly, promoting cooperation and coordination between the regional economic communities, the African Development Bank and the UN Economic Commission for Africa, determining policies for cooperation between the AU and Africa's partners and promoting gender equality in all AU programs. To facilitate the coordination of key sectoral programs at continental and regional levels, the Executive Council oversees several specialized technical committees, or STCs, which are composed of ministers and senior officials of member states. The STCs work closely with the AU Commission in technical areas such as finance, social development, employment, health, youth, gender equality and infrastructure, amongst others. The Permanent Representative Committee, or the PRC, consists of ambassadors and permanent representatives of member states. The PRC reports to the Executive Council and conducts the daily business of the African Union on behalf of the Assembly and Executive Council. Amongst its key functions, the PRC monitors the AU Commission budget, as well as other administrative and financial matters, and the implementation of policies, decisions, and agreements. Through various subcommittees, the PRC oversees various issues which include finance and administration, trade, multilateral cooperation, issues of refugees and internally displaced persons, funding for emergencies, and the structural reforms of the African Union. The Peace and Security Council, PSC, is the Union's main body for the prevention, management and resolution of conflicts amongst member states. Made up of 15 members from the 5 regions, the PSC is a collective security and early warning arrangement intended to facilitate timely and efficient responses to conflict and crisis situations in Africa. It operates under the African Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, which is the framework for promoting peace, security and stability on the continent. The PSC is supported by the AU Commission, the Panel of the Wise, which consists of highly respected African personalities from various segments of society who have made outstanding contributions to the cause of peace, security and development on the continent. The Continental Early Warning System, which works to anticipate and prevent conflicts on the continent and to provide timely information about evolving violent conflicts. The African Standby Force and the Peace Fund, which provides financial resources for peace support operations, such as the AU mission in Somalia. At the heart of the African Union is its Secretariat, the African Union Commission. Located in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the Commission is responsible for undertaking the day-to-day activities of the African Union. The work of the Commission is overseen by the chairperson, who is the Chief Executive Officer, the legal representative of the AU, and the Commission's Chief Accounting Officer. He is supported by a deputy chairperson who is responsible for administration and finance. The principals oversee several directorates, departments and institutions which work together to ensure the key programs of the African Union are implemented in key areas such as conflict resolution, peace and security, infrastructure and energy development, agricultural development, trade and industrial development, democracy, law and human rights, health, migration, labour and employment, promoting sports, arts and culture, education, science and technology, youth development, economic integration and private sector development, civil society engagement, gender equality and development environmental protection. Key in the implementation of the various programs of the African Union is the African Union Development Agency, which is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. The agency's key programs are on human capital development, specifically on skills enhancement, employment and women's empowerment. industrialization, science, technology and innovation, regional integration, implementing regional infrastructure projects and promoting African trade, natural resources governance and food security. Also working to promote funding of Africa's development is the African Union Foundation. The foundation mobilizes resources from the private sector, philanthropists, individuals and donors within Africa, the diaspora and globally to support key social development activities. The main bodies of the African Union that deal with issues of peoples and human rights and the promotion of good governance are the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the AU Commission on International Law, the AU Advisory Board on Corruption, and the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. The work of these institutions are guided by key treaties, such as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption, amongst other legal continental treaties. The key financial institutions within the structure of the organisation are the African Central Bank, the African Monetary Fund, and the African Investment Bank. The African Central Bank will work towards building a common monetary policy and single African currency as a way to accelerate economic integration. It will promote exchange rate stability and avoid competitive exchange rates depreciation, assist in the establishment of a multilateral system of payments, and eliminate foreign exchange restrictions that hamper the growth of world trade. The African Investment Bank will promote economic growth and economic integration by promoting public and private sector investment activities and mobilizing resources from capital markets inside and outside Africa to finance investment projects in African countries, as well as mobilize resources for investment in rural sector modernization. It will also provide technical assistance to countries to support execution of their investment. The African Monetary Fund will facilitate the integration of African economies by eliminating trade restrictions and providing greater monetary integration. It is expected to provide financial assistance to AU member states, act as a clearinghouse, and undertaking macroeconomic surveillance, coordinate the monetary policies and promote cooperation between member state monetary authorities and encouraging capital flows. The APRM is an instrument used by African states to voluntarily self-monitor their governance performance. Performance and progress are measured in 4 thematic areas: democracy and political governance, economic governance and management, corporate governance, socio-economic development. Each review leads to a national programme of action for the state concerned to address problems identified and law, good governance, democratic principles, gender equality and child rights. Fast-changing world and a vision to boost Africa's economic position and overall development, Africa needed to implement a solid strategic plan. Agenda 2063 places the aspirations of Africa's people at its core and aims to ensure that the growth and development envisioned for the continent is sustainable and inclusive, and supports the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. Agenda 2063 has been developed as a 50-year plan. Agenda 2063 has been developed as a 50-year plan from the year 2013 to the year 2063. Underpinning the plan are the 7 aspirations of Africa's citizens for prosperity, inclusive growth and sustainable development, integration and unity based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance, good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, to live in a peaceful, stable and secure environment. A spirit of Pan-Africanism to prevail and tap its heritage and build a strong cultural identity. Active mandate within the evolving economic, political and social needs of the continent. This exercise, termed the institutional reforms, resulted in the decision that the African Union needed to address 5 focal areas, namely, focusing on fewer priority areas within continental scope, specifically political affairs, peace and security, economic integration and championing Africa's voice in the global arena, and also reduce duplication in roles through division of labour among AU, RECs, continental organisations and member states. Institutional realignment, with a view to create a lean and performance-oriented senior leadership team, as well as reviewing the structures of the organisation to improve service delivery to African citizens. Connecting with African citizenry by providing continent-wide public goods and services. Enhancing the role of youth and women in society and within its own organisational structure. Increasing private sector participation in Africa's development agenda at the policy level. Ensuring the rollout of an African passport by member states to promote the free movement agenda, and setting up a volunteer African Youth Corps and facilitate cultural and sports exchange. Ensuring that it operates in an effective and efficient manner by rationalising and reducing the number of summits and meetings, and focusing on external partnerships that prioritise Africa's development agenda. Ensure Africa is self-reliant and finances its growth and development agenda by ensuring sustainable financing for continental programmes by implementing 0.2% levy on eligible imports, establishing an AU reserve fund and implementing the highest standards of international financial management and accountability. With a clearly defined structure and a transformational development plan encapsulated in Agenda 2063, the African Union is geared to deliver the Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa. The Africa we want. Let us all unite to design the future we desire and to build the Africa we want by visiting www.au.int.
That charter also enjoined the member states of the OAU to work for the peaceful settlement of disputes by negotiation, by mediation, by conciliation, and arbitration, in order for us, for the OAU to accomplish the purposes of the Charter. And this served as the mechanism for the peaceful settlement of disputes among member states. Let's look at some of the successes in terms of this dispute resolution. The OAU successfully resolved numerous disputes over international borders. If we look at the 1960s and 1970s, we find that the OAU was successful in resolving a number of border disputes, and those included the ones between Algeria and Morocco, the ones between Mali and Upper Volta, now known as Burkina Faso, the one between Gabon and Equatorial Guinea, and between Ethiopia and Somalia. The African Union treaties, the AU Non-Aggression and Common Defense Pact and other Union Convention, and the African Union Convention on Cross-Border Cooperation are among some of the legacy documents on the foundations laid by the work of our forebears. And as we are discussing, Doreen, I'd just like to highlight that a lot of this information, in fact, all of this information, is available on the African Union website, and our audiences can actually have a look at it on www.int.au. I will just come with that again. It is www.au.int. So we'd really encourage all our audiences to have a look at that. If I still have a few more minutes, Doreen, to talk about the OAU did not just fight for liberation, but it also encouraged African countries to proclaim their permanent sovereignty over their natural resources. And at the same time, it pressed for the modification of international law with regard to the intercontinental shelf and territorial waters, leading to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. In terms of transport and communications, the OAU, together with other regional institutions, worked with continental scope. And these included things such as the Pan-African Telecommunications Union, the African Civil Aviation, and the Trans-Africa Highway, which was coming from Algeria to Mali and Niger, and it was also coming from Mombasa in Kenya to Uganda. And this was a means of promoting the exchange of goods, personnel, and the creation of an African common market. I think we will know more as well when we talk about the African common market. We have the treaty establishing the African common market, and it is normally known as the Abuja Treaty. And we would also encourage our audiences to have a look at that, because it really paints the way towards African integration. The OAU also formed the African Civil Aviation Commission, which was created in 1964. The Pan-African Telecommunications Union, PATU, which is now known as the African Telecommunications Union, which was found in 1977. So all these are initiatives of the OAU, which were undertaken outside of the commonly known role of the OAU in fighting liberation. So today we know that our African Union is made up of 55 member countries, but when the OAU was formed in 1963, many of those were still under colonial rule, as we have spoken about. So today we will be sharing some of those movements, the personalities who were the activists for the complete freedom and internet, and the kind of international support that the OAU received from other countries around the world. I think perhaps I will stop here, Doreen, and allow us to move perhaps on to another question.
Thank you, Wayne, for that background. You're absolutely right. We cannot connect the dots forward, but we can only connect them backward by having a look at how far we have, traveled and how we got here. What you're looking at your screen right now, is people starting to come into the Nelson Mandela Hall, here at the African Union headquarters, where the formal celebrations will take place. We're expecting a number of speakers today to set the tone of the day, We also have children joining us in the celebration, the future of the continent. So we cannot leave them out in these commemorative activities as well. Now, remember, for those watching us from wherever you are within the continent and in the diaspora, you too can be part of the commemorative activities. Now, this is a time for us to celebrate, to recognize the role and the contribution of our founding fathers and mothers of the continent and the organization as well. But also just have a look, at the many Africans on the continent and in the diaspora who have contributed greatly to the political liberation of the continent and equally, as we said earlier, the social economic emancipation of Africa. This is an opportunity for you to share the information, the knowledge, the best practices of our past, and to encourage each other to take on the vision and drive the realization of the Africa we want. Now, here's a couple of things you can do to amplify the vision of our commemorative activities today. We can use this opportunity to combat the stereotypes, the harmful social norms that erode and diminish the role of our forefathers and our foremothers in the liberation of Africa.
The African Union is Africa Day, which is today, which marks the formation of the OAU in 1963. Then we have African Union Day, which marks that day at which the organization transitioned from being known as the OAU to being an African, to increase the prosperity, to transform the lives of African people by addressing integration to the development of Africa. And of course, from the regions, then initiatives cascade down to the national level. So the African Union was established in accordance with its constitutive. Then they also set the objectives of the African Union. Let me just read them out to you. 1, it is to achieve greater unity and solidarity between African countries and their people, to defend the sovereignty, the territorial and outcome of these processes, especially the one that talks about African common positions. That is an African common position. That is what Africa wants, and all the leaders of the continent are united behind that, and in their different spaces, they keep pushing for the continent to have that permanent representation with 2 members at the United Nations. To promote peace, security, and stability on the continent, to promote democratic principles and institutions, and to promote popular participation and good governance. In terms of the democratic principles and institutions, if our audience...
Thank you for joining us. Stay with us for the rest of the program today.
Union. Thereafter, we will have a short video presentation.
Poser les gens.